he teaches the kids up there, first of all, that they can meditate, and then how to meditate, and he helps them with meditation and a bit of personal responsibility along the way. He began volunteering for CASA about a year ago, and he has offered to help us learn how to meditate and how good it is for you. So without any more, Don.
All right. Over to you. So welcome everybody. It's a joy to be here. I just want to compliment you all on your support and volunteerism for CASA. I have found it to be really a wonderful cause, and it's kind of become my mission. And I have this theory that if you have a good mission in life, you're living a good life. So congratulations on volunteering. So you'll see here on the title, I've called it a fusion of neuroscience and ancient intuition. It's because meditation is extremely old, as you're going to find out here. But I worked in the field. I ran a couple of radiology medical imaging departments also in my career. So I'm familiar with devices like SPECT scanners, MRI, single photon emission, diffusion tensor imaging, MRI. So we have found out so many wonderful facts about the brain. And we've also found out a lot of very interesting things of how meditation actually helps to heal and improve the brain. I'll be bringing a lot of the modern science in also. There we go. So meditation is actually probably far older than we know or can know. This is Dr. Andrew Newberg. He is from the University of Pittsburgh. He's a MD that studies neuroscience. He's written, I think, about 7 books now. But in his book, he talks about the seal that has been, you see here on the left. This was found in what is called the Indus Valley, which is actually in modern day Pakistan. This has been dated to about 3,500 years ago. So meditation has been around for quite a long time. What's interesting about where this seal was found is actually, this used to be, this area actually was a part of Pakistan, I'm sorry, part of Persia for many, many years, but it was also a part of Greece, and there's some evidence that the teachings from this area of the world actually affected the famous Greek philosophers like Socrates and Plato. So I found that to be an interesting connection. So Dr. Andrew Newberg has the theory that we actually learned how to meditate from a couple of different sources. One of those is being a hunter. I'm not a hunter myself, but I've talked to friends that have gone out hunting, and it's interesting that it takes a lot of concentration. So if you can imagine, 3,000 to 5,000 years ago, an ancient hunter with a bow and arrow or spear, they have to stay in the forest. They have to be very quiet. They cannot move. And then they have to have a great ability to focus and concentrate in terms of hunting their game. And so Dr. Newberg actually thinks that this is one of the areas where we might have, people might have recognized that by focusing your mind, it seems to actually change your mind in terms of how you think a little bit. So his other theory is that many years ago, we actually, at the end of the day, we'd sit around the campfire, and as probably most of you know, that by sitting around the campfire, it's kind of mesmerizing. It's very relaxing typically. It kind of commands your attention. And so he thinks that we could have actually learned meditation by just people becoming focused, relaxed, and having high attention during those evening fires. So I want to start out with just talking about the brain a little bit. Your brain has 86 billion neurons in it, weighs about 3 pounds, and it's probably the most fantastic piece of part of your body, or even in terms of technology, there's absolutely nothing like it. I have a background in computers also. There's no computer system that can come anywhere close to replicating what the human brain can do. Obviously, that may change in the future, but for right now, your brain runs on about as much power as a 100-watt light bulb, which is a lot less power than what a supercomputer runs on. So you have to find it amazing just from the standpoint is it works so well and takes so little power. So first slide, I want to talk with you, our next slide, please. I want to talk with you a little bit about teenagers, because that's an area where we have found out some really interesting things. So this is my idea of a teenager. For those of you that have been teenagers, you remember kind of what we were like. We were risk takers. We were always worried about our buddies and friends, of how they would see us. Typically defiance with our parents, and I think the term when I was in high school was people would call us spaced out, because we wouldn't really focus and have much attention. We have found over the years that teenagers actually have a really good excuse for that. The best book that I've seen on it is Inventing Ourselves by Sarah Jane Blakemore. And she also has a talk on YouTube if you have an interest in learning about the teenage brain. I have found it very, very useful. I've actually used it when I've worked with teens to remember that their brains work a little bit differently than an adult brain. Next slide, please. So what happens in a teenage brain versus an adult brain is, as a child gets older, they really grow a lot of neurons and have a lot of connections with those neurons. But when you become an adolescent, you start losing the connections in the brain. It's actually called pruning. Just like you would prune a bush or a tree or something, you're removing things. The teenage brain is actually going through a process of being reduced. It's kind of the metaphor of use it or lose it. So the teenage years are actually a really important time for the kids to really work hard at learning, because they have so many neural connections. But regardless of how much studying and learning they're doing, they're going to have this pruning process. And this is why when we're all teenagers that we forget to do things, we don't pay attention, we're focused on our buddies, we kind of lose our sense of not responsibility, but we're more about taking risks. So there's actually a very, very clear biological reason for why teenagers do that, and that's because the brain is being pruned. And that goes on really, starting around anywhere from 11 up to the age of even the high age of like 24. So that goes on for a while. So even people in their early 20s can kind of have a bit of a teenager affect to them. So one of the most amazing tests that have ever been done it's called the marshmallow test. So I don't know if you can see it well, but this little boy has his nose on a marshmallow. And this test is a good 30 to 40 years old. It's been replicated hundreds of times, and it's always the same finding. So what they do is they put the kids in a room, they give them a marshmallow, and they say, when I come back, if you haven't eaten that marshmallow, I'm going to give you a second marshmallow. So they actually, and you can go online and see this. It's just hilarious to watch these kids trying to fight themselves so that they can get the second marshmallow. But what they found is that kids that have the kind of the self-control and tenacity to get themselves to wait until the teacher comes back in the room actually do better in life. There seems to be this correlation of self-control, delayed reward that seems to be very helpful to us in living our lives. So one of the things that they have actually come up with is if you're working with a child or have a child and they get a good grade, I can remember telling my kids how smart they were, and I was proud of getting their good grade. What I should be doing is telling them, I am so proud of the hard work that you did. I know that took a lot of work and you had to study a lot, but you've done a great job, and look how well the hard work has paid off for you. So what we need to kind of do for our children is praise their hard work and praise their tenacity. So I actually have been incorporating that, in terms of the CASA kid that I'm working with. He is in detention, and he has gotten himself up to the next higher level in terms of his ranking there at the detention center. He's gone to the highest positive level of being well behaved. And I almost said, hey, that's, I'm glad that you got to level 4 or level 5 or something. And then I caught myself and said, I know that took some really hard work for you to get there, and some great self-control. So please know that I appreciate that hard work that it took for you to get there. So if we focus on the hard work, we kind of and praise them for hard work, it teaches them to work even harder and have more tenacity and have more self-control. So the other thing that we have found out about the brain is it doesn't quite work the way that we all thought it worked. This gentleman is Donald Hoffman. He has a PhD from MIT. He's what is called a computational neuroscientist, but what he has found, and others have found, I'll share a couple with you, is that we don't really see the world as it is. We all think that when we look at something, we see it exactly as it is out there. What really happens is we see things better or worse depending upon our survival needs. So, for example, if you see a flower, let's say it's 5,000 years ago, and you see a flower and you see a saber-toothed tiger exactly the same. Well, it's probably better that you see the saber-toothed tiger better than seeing the flower. So our brains have actually evolved to help us survive and manage difficult environments. So what we see is really almost like an interface between us and what's really out there, and it's meant to help us survival. And he does have a really wonderful, interesting book, The Case Against Reality, if anybody has an interest in kind of more about the science, or you can go and see him on a TED Talk. I've tried to include, I'm a visual learner, so I've tried to include some visual sources if you have a bit more of an interest in this. So the other neuroscientist that's spoken a lot on exactly the same issue, I thought I would give you at least a couple sources in terms of how do we see reality. What we have found out from neuroscience and MRI imaging is that our eyes actually take in information. That information is reduced by several times, and then it's sent to the brain, and the brain actually reduces the information even more, and then kind of a simulation is created in the brain, which creates a visual field. 1/3 of your brain is used to see. So a huge portion of the brain and the energy that's used is used in the process of seeing. So we don't just look out there and see the world. What happens is we look out there, the lights come into our eyes, and it's sent to the brain, and then the brain actually creates a 3D image for us. So when I started in medicine, we were trained with this about the brain with this funny little chart over here on the left, that the right side of the brain was creativity, intuition, feelings, imagination, kind of the arts, and your left brain was the logical side of the brain. Logic, facts, sequencing, mathematics, language. 10 years ago, Ian McGilchrist actually wrote a wonderful book, The Master and His Emissary, talking about that this is not true. The way your brain actually works is that your brain, the left side of your brain, helps you focus and see smaller details, helps you on things like mathematics or science, very detailed, fine, if you're working on a watch or something like that. The right side of the brain looks at the big picture. It allows you to see other things that surround you that may be of interest or may be of importance. I like to use the following example to get this sense of how your left and right brain work. So let's say you're at work and you're walking down the hallway, and your phone rings, and it's a text message from your boss, and you need to answer that message. Your left brain is engaged. You have to kind of think about what you're going to write, but at the same time, you're walking down the hallway. You don't want to run into things, because that's probably not going to look too good if you run into a wall while you're texting your boss. So your right brain is taking control of the big picture for you, seeing things that are around you, and making sure that you are traveling safely and not running into people or running into the walls. The main thing is that your brain, both hemispheres of your brain work together. But interesting, we have kind of lost some of the functionality of our right brain as we have become more technical in our society. For example, we all have cell phones and other devices that take our attention. And McGilchrist's main point is that we may want to, work on developing the right side of our brain, so we see the big picture of life also. So this is just his theory in a nutshell: is the left hemisphere, sharp focused, narrowly focused, attention to detail. Those are going to be things like working on very small items, mathematics, different type of science, where you really have to focus on things. And the right hemisphere is for sustained broad knowledge, really being vigilant about your environment, what's going on. Again, that's the side that keeps you from running into the walls. One thing I will tell you is that the only thing that I have found that strengthens this relationship is actually meditation. So the other thing that I've always had an interest in, and actually got trained in when I was in radiation therapy training, is hypnosis. I always thought that hypnosis was just kind of a crazy woo-woo thing, if you'll pardon the expression, but because of what we've learned by scanning people that were hypnotized in MRI scanners and PET scanners and SPECT scanners, is that hypnosis actually works very well for about 20% of the population. 20% of the population are so hypnotizable that they can actually be hypnotized and have significant surgery. So if any of you have a interest in that, David Spiegel, who is at Stanford University, does some really wonderful talks for the public about understanding the science of hypnosis, what it is, how it works. But that has been hypnosis is a major underused tool in our society. And now that we know that it absolutely works, it would be wonderful to see it used a bit more. I'm going to pause and see if there are some questions about what I've talked about so far. Some of it probably sounds a little crazy, and that's okay. It was actually surprising to me as I learned this stuff.
Don, this is Margie. I was wondering, hello, I was just wondering about how our brains are adapting to this new world that we're, the COVID thing. I don't know, is anyone talking about how we're changing, if anything? I mean, I know it's been a relatively short amount of time, but are our brain functions different, or are different people functioning differently, and some better than others based on?
Absolutely. And that was also one of my reasons for, teaching the meditation course now in the middle of the difficulty that we're all going through. It's not fun to be at home so much and not be close to your loved ones, but meditation does help you adapt to difficult situations. It reduces the stress of those difficult situations. It allows you to stay better focused during those situations. But we have and I'm going to be talking about it here in a bit, there is the science of neuroplasticity. We used to think that you were born with your brain and that was pretty much not it. Your brain changes throughout your life. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. I've told the kids at the detention center, I want them to think of their brain as a muscle. If you use that muscle, you will strengthen it. And in strengthening it, you will be far more successful at life. But if we, just sit around during this time and, are not reading or challenging ourselves intellectually, our neural connections are being lost. Just like I talked about the teenage kids, their brain was being pruned. That's also true in terms of how you use knowledge. So the more that you can use your brain, especially for those that I'm turning 65 this year, so I'm learning that I have to continue to use my brain to keep it healthy. So it's the theory of use it or lose it. But yes, our brains are very affected by the difficulties with being isolated during COVID. And my hope is this meditation will be helpful to folks that are going through it. Thank you. Other questions? Okay. So just to give you a little bit of the science in terms of how do we know that meditation actually works? How does science prove that it's actually worked? This is a very old SPECT scan. So what you're looking at here in this image is the image on your left says baseline at the bottom. If you look at the top of that, it says attention area. That's your frontal lobe. That's what makes you you. It's our executive area of the brain. It's what makes us be able to function and think. It also, if we, for a teenager, if they come up with some crazy thought, it's also the part of the brain that says, no, I'm not going to do that. So if you look at these two different scans, if you look at the one on the right now where it says attention area, you'll see that this person that's meditating has more red in that frontal area. This was one of the first scans that we knew that meditation was actually making a difference in the brain. And this was done by Dr. Newberg that I showed you at the start of it. This image I actually used and shared this with the medical staff in about 2007 when I was at St. Mary's in Colorado. I wanted permission to teach meditation to the cancer patients, and so I used what we knew about meditation in the brain at that time to get permission from medical staff to teach meditation and have unequivocal proof that it actually worked. So this is from the same patient and same hospital, but if you look at the image on the left-hand side, it says the orientation area. So what that does is that tells your body where are you at in kind of space. It gives you a sense of that you're sitting up, standing, or whatever. You'll see on the right picture at the bottom, the orientation area is has far less red in it. So what that means is it's kind of like your body has become relaxed. You have less awareness of it. And interestingly, you actually have less pain. If you have a body like mine, my body's kind of always got aches and pains. Through meditation, it actually helps relieve some of those aches and pains. And this is how it does it. It actually, your brain kind of lets go of the physical sense of your body and it gets relaxed. And you actually feel like you're easier to move and walk and more relaxed. So this is a very modern scan. If you went to Lawrence Memorial Hospital and had an MRI scan, that's the first generation of scanners. This is from the second generation of MRI scanners. It's called fMRI. That means functional MRI scanning. It's actually scanning the blood flow through the brain. So the image on the left-hand side is of one of 15 people that they did an experiment on where they put a small amount of heat on their hand to where it was just becoming painful. And the little yellow part is where the pain is actually perceiving pain. Perfect, right there. So then they took the same people and taught them to meditate. They did 4 courses and had them learn to meditate for a few weeks, came back, put the same amount of pain stimulus to them, and you can see there's hardly any yellow. So one of the things that I think is really wonderful about meditation is that it does help alleviate physical pain, and that's probably one of the major reasons that I became a meditator, is because it really helps to lower how much pain your body is feeling. So this is Dr. Sarah Lazar. She's a microbiologist that turned into a radiologist, and she actually started meditating herself, and she wanted to know, does any of this meditation stuff do anything to the brain? And as you'll see here from the next image, from her scientific work, we were able to find out that through meditation, it's just like I gave you the metaphor of the human muscle. The more you work your muscle, the stronger it becomes. The more you work your mind and brain, the stronger it becomes. So what changes in the brain, what Dr. Sarah Lazar found out for us, is that you get increased connections. These are called synapses. The technical word for this is called neuroplasticity. It just means that the more you get your brain working or firing together, the expression is the neurons that fire together, wire together, that's actually exercising the brain. So if you're meditating and you're increasing your attention or focus and relaxing your body, you're building up a network in your brain that is getting stronger and stronger. So each time you do it, your attention's going to get better, your relaxation is going to get better. And so we have found this unequivocally in science, that meditation makes a big difference, in the very big positive difference in the brain. One of the things I've always been fascinated with is what I'm calling the interior dialogue. We all have a kind of what I call a little voice in our head that kind of talks to us, or we think about things in the future, we think about things in the past. Dr. Charles Finninghorn is out of London, and he gave this talk for the Royal Society, and he shares with us pictures of his daughter talking to herself. And he has discovered that we as little children, as we talk to ourselves, that is actually what gives us our voice in our head, our internal dialogue. So I just found it fascinating that we've actually discovered why everyone has this internal dialogue. So again, that's actually from the Royal Society. It's very interesting to watch if you have an interest, but that voice in our head can be a really good and wonderful thing, but it also can be, for people, for example, that have a depression, that voice becomes negative, it becomes onerous, it becomes overbearing. So one of the great things that meditation can do is actually reduce the impact of that internal dialogue in favorable ways. So this is Dr. Judson Brewer. He's an MD, PhD. He did some beautiful work on the human brain and addiction. He took people that were severely addicted to tobacco. So most people are able to give up tobacco after 2 or 3 tries. He took the toughest group and taught them to meditate, and also taught them how to be mindful about what they were doing, because most of us are just on automatic pilot. When we're smoking a cigarette, we just automatically, an hour later, just automatically light up the next one. He teaches them how to be aware of what they're doing, and actually had a far greater success in helping people eliminate their negative addictions by teaching them meditation and mindfulness. So yeah, it's very difficult for any of us to give up addictions. When we think of addictions, we think of somebody addicted to the drug, but there's people that are addicted to gambling. There's people that are addicted to Twitter and Facebook and all of those other things too. So we know now that meditation is actually, and we all have addictions, right? People are addicted to money, power, all sorts of different things. But meditation seems to give us the ability to self-control our own experience and help us reduce our addictions. Probably the most interesting thing that's been found out about the brain in the last 100 years was discovered completely by accident by Marcus Reichel at Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri. They were actually doing a completely different type of experiment on people. They were giving them like math problems or something to solve. And when they, so they would have them try to solve these puzzles, and then they would have them just stop and relax and rest. Well, what he found out was that when they were relaxing, their brain actually kicked into high gear. And when he, started asking them, what are you thinking about? What's going on? They would start talking about things like, what do I got to do tomorrow? Or they'll be thinking about their past or some situation that they need to deal with. So it's, he discovered what's called the default mode network. It's called the DMN network in the brain. And it's actually that dialogue that we all have that, makes us think about, well, what do I need to do after this presentation today? What have I forgotten to do? Those types of things. So when your brain is at rest and it starts thinking about stuff that it needs to do, it actually works at a much higher rate than when you're actually doing a problem solving. So it's really using up a lot of valuable energy at that point. We have found that meditation also helps to relax this default mode network. So people that are always worried have a very active default mode, are always anxious have a very, very active default mode. And by meditating, it helps to reduce how active this default mode is, and it really helps the brain be much more relaxed and help the person be in a much more pleasant mode, so to speak. So this is just an image of the default mode. So we used to think of the brain in terms of parts of the brain. Now we think in terms of the network parts of the brain. So we have over here on the upper left-hand side, you'll see the kind of the brain sliced through the middle. It's red in the front, red in the back. We used to think of those as separate parts. If you'll go down to the image below, you'll see a yellow part that corresponds to the front of the brain, a red part that corresponds to the back part of the brain, and that blue is kind of the wiring that goes from the front of the brain. Again, that's your executive, that's where you think, to the back of the brain. So this is more like a telephone network. I always think of in the olden days when there was somebody at the switchboard pulling plugs and moving the plugs back and forth. But these networks actually appear to be very, very important in how the brain works, and extremely important in terms of like depression, anxiety, anger. It's just where people obsess about perhaps negative things in their life, where if this area is overactive, you're much more likely to be upset or anxious. So, and this is all very brand new, less than 10 years. So it's really changed the way we think about the brain. And it's also, this is the third generation of MRI scanners. This is called diffusion tensor imaging. It's a whole brand new way of imaging that has really taught us so much about the brain. It's an amazing technology. So this slide is very, very, very busy. I want to apologize for that. But I always like to stick to the science rather than, somebody's opinion about what meditation is good for. I've heard all sorts of crazy stories about meditation is good for curing cancer and baldness and everything else, and that's just not true. This is called a meta study. It's 4 or 5 different studies that are pulled together. It's an aggregate of studies. And so the things that actually work with meditation is it does help reduce anxiety. It does help reduce depression. It does help a little bit with stress. It does help a little bit with negative affect, and negative affect is like me, grumpy old man is how they define it. If you go down a little farther, it says quality of life, and it says low for improvement. This study has been updated, so now it's actually moderate for improving the quality of life. I will tell you unequivocally that meditation has improved my quality of life very, very much. So it's very helpful. And then we talked about the pain piece. It's also very helpful with reducing the amount of pain. For at Harvard, they actually have done a bunch of studies teaching people that have had chronic back injuries or brain injuries or some other injuries that there's no cure for, how to control their pain by using meditation and mindfulness. If you'll look at the top where it says, it's a yellow line that says mantra, that's the type of meditation where somebody gives you a word to keep repeating over and over. You'll find that mantra meditation is not as effective as just what's called mindful meditation. That is just where you're watching your breath and paying attention to your breath. So meditation is considered very, very safe. However, it's just like anything else. Water is extremely safe, but if you drink too much water, that's definitely not good for you. And actually, too much water can actually harm you. So what I try to caution people on is be very careful when you start with meditation. And now I'll actually kind of give you what I think is the absolute safest way to become a meditator. But there are some sites, if you have an interest in terms of unusual effects of people that have undergone meditation training. We usually see this when people are meditating too much. It's really not wise. I've read about people that they've never been a meditator and they go off on a 10-day retreat and have all sorts of strange experiences. And of course that makes sense because their brain is not trained for that much meditation. Meditation is just like everything else. You use it in moderation and it will be of help to you. But if you meditate 5 hours a day or 10 hours a day, that's too much meditation. So we'll talk a little bit about how much meditation to do. Thank you. So my rule of thumb is never do a meditation retreat unless you've had a year experience with meditation and you're with a qualified and experienced instructor. So I also believe you need to pace yourself. So one of the things about meditation, it's hard just to get in the rhythm of meditating. So just start out real easy. Just kind of find your spot in your house where you'd like to meditate and just meditate for 1 minute that first week, twice a day. That's all you need to do. And then the second week, go to 5, the third week, 10, the fourth week, 15 minutes, and week 5, 20. And you should not ever go over 20 minutes unless you are with a highly trained instructor with a lot of experience. If at any time you ever have any side effect or ill feelings or concerns, all you have to do is stop or delay or slow down, and those typically will be relieved. If you have any sort of prior mental health issues of any type, it's always wise to contact your doctor before you start. Most doctors love to hear their patients are interested in meditation. They know the positive side on it, but it's always best to get your mental health provider's advice before starting meditation if you've had any sort of past mental health issues. So I'm going to talk now a little bit, well, how do I meditate? So there's the first piece of setting. Where in your house are you going to do this? How are you going to sit? How are you going to breathe? How long should you meditate? And I'm just going to show this again because I consider it important of just start out for a minute. You are on a pathway that is evolutionary. It's just like going to the gym. I could go out to the gym day one and work out for 5 hours and then not go back, and it's not going to do me any good. But if I go every day and increase it a few minutes every day over the course of 90 days, I'm going to note the difference. And I try to tell people you will notice a difference in about 8 to 12 weeks. Pretty much everybody by 12 weeks notices a difference in terms of being able to focus better, a mental clarity, and a more positive mood. So when should you meditate? And it's really pretty much up to you when you want to do it. When I'm working with the kids at the detention center, I tell them the rule of thumb is when to meditate is called before. Meditate before breakfast or before lunch or before dinner or before bedtime. You only need to do it twice a day. So the selection of those different time slots is completely up to you. If you do decide to meditate before bedtime, keep it very, very short, because if you meditate for a full 20 minutes before bedtime, you're not going to fall asleep, or it's going to be more difficult to sleep, because meditation provides that extra attention and makes it more difficult to sleep. So again, before breakfast or before lunch, before dinner, or before bedtime. So what is the practice of meditation? It's nothing but sitting up straight, breathing, learning how to watch your breath, and then monitoring your thoughts, and then keeping yourself orientated in terms of when that thought comes, just let it go. So, for example, if you are just starting to meditate, you kind of getting relaxed, and then a thought comes up, oh, this afternoon I need to go to the grocery store. It's okay that thought comes up. That's absolutely okay. But when it comes up, just let it go, and then go back to focusing on your breath as it comes in and out. What you want to do is pay attention to your breath coming in and out of your body. When a thought comes, you just let that thought go. So what happens is you are increasing your ability to focus, and you're focusing on your breath. And so you're actually working your brain during that process and making your brain stronger. And then the last kind of caveat here is, again, never do a meditation retreat unless you have a year of experience, and you're going to go to a retreat with a qualified instructor that knows what they're doing. There's nothing bad about doing a meditation retreat, as long as you are prepared for it. You're walking into a situation that is under the command and control of a person that knows what they're doing. So I have all sorts of excuses why I don't meditate. So these are kind of my excuses. Is I'm too busy, I don't have time. This stuff is boring as you know what. This meditation is not working. And the fourth one is we're kind of embarrassed to kind of let anybody know. I've been meditating since 1979, but I really didn't teach until about the year 2005, when all of the science came out. A lot of people, prior to that time, a lot of people didn't think that meditation was anything real. But what's interesting now is we have millions of people that have gotten on to meditation. So it's a lot easier to talk about, and a lot easier to do, but it's a little difficult to take this practice and actually incorporate it into your life. When I give this talk at the hospital, I talk a little bit about I'm too busy, because in our society, people are extremely busy, and we have to be very sensitive to that. So what I tell them is that, yes, you are too busy, but if you consider this like depositing money in the bank, you're going to get additional rewards by meditating. Those rewards are going to turn into saving you time. So let me describe it this way. If I'm not a meditator and my mind is always busy, I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing, I'm getting frustrated, I'm probably burning off a lot of time. If after 90 days my mind is quiet, it's clear, I'm more focused, I'm more organized, I'm probably using my time far more effective. So the rule of thumb is it is going to take a big investment up front, but you will probably save time if you practice meditation but you're not going to get that savings until at least after 90 days of having meditated. So I try to warn people not to buy anything to go out and meditate. So yes, you can spend $50,000 or actually move your house here to the Lakeview, I guess, and buy all this expensive stuff, but you don't need it. The main thing is to find a spot that is comfortable to you. Also, you don't need anything. Just it needs to be comfortable and as quiet as possible. That's all it is. Do not spend any money unnecessarily in this meditation process. So there's always people that are going to want to sell you something for your meditation. So this is called a Zafu and Zabuton that people like, and they do work very nicely to make you comfortable during meditation. But you don't need to buy those. You can just use your pillows. Those will work just as well. The main thing is to use enough pillows so that you can sit up straight and that you are comfortable. It's very important that you're comfortable during the process. So here I'm going to tell you that avoid using, these are actually for your reducing sound for your ears, for actually people that are doing target practice. You do not need these unless you have one of the following: dogs in your house that bark, or the neighbors' dogs that bark, teenagers because they're going to play their music fairly loud, or if your neighbors are out there early in the morning cutting their yard and their lawnmowers unusually loud. If that's the case, then it's okay to wear an ear muffler that will reduce that sound for you. It's very hard when you're just starting out to try to meditate in a noisy place, but at some point you're going to want to give up those sound reduction device, because you want to be able to meditate in the airport, on a bus, any place that you have the time to meditate. You're not going to want to have to carry around an ear set to be able to meditate. So it can be helpful to begin with, but it also can be a detriment afterwards. So people will also try to sell you a way to time. So, and it's important to kind of have a timer, but everybody that has a cell phone now has a timer already. You don't need to buy anything for it at all. So inside of everybody's cell phone, there's typically a timing device, and you can set this for 1 minute, 5 minutes, 15 minutes, and it will give you an alarm. And that's really kind of helpful to make sure that you're not meditating for too long, because sometimes you may sit down to meditate thinking you're going to do it for 10 minutes, and 40 minutes later you realize you've been meditating way too long. So just know that you don't need to buy anything. You can just use your cell phone for that. So there are all sorts of expensive technology that you can buy to help you with your meditation. This is called the Muse device. It is absolutely, positively not needed. Now, in saying that I will tell you that I did acquire one of these for use at the detention center, because in working with teenagers, I've found that they need something very solid that they can really point to that gives them the confidence that they know how to meditate. So with the young people in the detention center, I use this. It actually makes the sound of a bird when they have gotten themselves in a perfect state of meditation. It's definitely fun to try, but it's definitely not needed. And again, it's just a device that you're not going to want to carry around when you meditate. So it's best not to get started with these things. Again, I'm using it for the kids at the detention center, but it's only to give them a sense of confidence that they can meditate. So you don't need to sit like a pretzel. That's the good news. So there's a full lotus where your legs are fully crossed, half lotus. I have bad knees, so I kind of do this Burmese thing. But the thought here is sit the way you are comfortable. It's You know, if you want to just sit in a chair, that's great. Just try to keep your back away from the back of the chair so your back is very straight. The main thing is to keep your back straight and make sure you're sitting and comfortable. So think of this as that red dot as a thought that comes into your mind. We have the conscious mind, and within that, thoughts come up. And we're going to practice meditating here in a minute, and you're going to actually have a sense of your thoughts arising. So again, the main thing is do not let that thought take you away. What I mean by that is if you're sitting quietly and a thought comes in, I need to go to the grocery store, don't start shopping in your mind. Let that thought go, come back to your breath, and wait for the next thought that will arise and let that go. So I thought we'd just do a 1-minute meditation. If you don't want to participate, that's absolutely okay. I'm just going to talk you through it. So all you have to do is sit up straight, kind of have your head in a position that's comfortable for you. Typically, it's with a little bit of tilt. Hands in your lap, if that's comfortable. I know people that have actually meditated with their arms kind of about here because of neck problems, but do what's comfortable for you. And we'll just go ahead and start this. So just taking a deep breath and let it out. And just pay attention to that breath, the next breath as it comes in. Just breathe in. Let it out. Just pay very good attention to your breath as it comes in and comes out. Just keep your mind as quiet as possible. The only thing you pay attention to is your breath. Just focus on that breath. Just let yourself get quiet. Just fall in love with the sense of your breath. If thought comes, just let it go. Just breathe and relax. Breathe and relax. Just let go of your thoughts. Feel your breath. Just listen to the silence. Are you focused on your breath? Are you focused on your breath? Just breathe and relax and listen to the silence. Just focus on breath. Let your thoughts go. Breathe and relax. Okay, so that's pretty much what it's like. You are now all professional meditators. So it's really so very simple that a lot of people go like, that's all there is to it, you know. And that's pretty much, yes, there are other meditation methods. They're typically taught after a person's been meditating for a year. But this is this particular meditation mode is called alpha brainwave meditation, and that's the one that is relaxing. It's mentally clearing, and it also reduces pain. So that, in a nutshell, is what meditation is. And I am ready for additional questions.
Okay, Don, there were a few that came in through the chat. So Vera was asking, can someone lay down instead of sitting when they meditate?
Yes, they can. Absolutely. The trick is not to fall asleep. We are all kind of trained when you lay down in bed, that's to go to sleep. But you can lay in the bed, with a pillow behind your head, your hands on your abdomen, and then when you breathe in, you can feel your hands kind of lifted from the breath. But we teach that method so when people are ill and can't get out of bed, they can still perform their meditation. So absolutely, you can definitely do that.
Great. Then Christian asked, what is the downside of too much meditation?
So too much meditation can make people trying to feel a little bit out of sorts. So I want to use the unscientific term of space cadet, where you're kind of unfocused, that type of thing. If you have, for some people, if they've had trauma in their past, some of those negative thoughts may come back, things like that. But again, those things are fairly easy to get through by either reducing your meditation or delay meditation for a few days, those types of things. But, people have gone to these retreats that have never meditated, and they're meditating for 10 days, and all of a sudden they're having what are called lucid dreams, where they have fallen asleep, but their eyes are open, and they're actually dreaming with their eyes open, and it can be terrifying for people. It's not harmful, but it can be terrifying to dream with your eyes open.
Yeah. Okay. Then what is your opinion on apps that people can get to help with guided meditations, like Calm?
Yeah. So my rule of thumb is to stay away from any technology. But those apps actually can be helpful when you're beginning. They all have timers in those. They all can kind of talk you a bit through the process, but I would not use the app for any more than maybe a month, and then just give that up, because you don't want to have that app with you at all times to meditate. If you want to just sit in the airport and meditate, you don't have to, put your headphones on or, whatever, and gear up for that. You want to be as free as possible from any technology. The other piece I forgot that people ask about is, should I meditate with my eyes open or closed? It's pretty much up to you. The general thinking is meditating with your eyes open is a little bit more effective in terms of taking the quietness that you've accumulated and being able to, when you end your meditation, continue to feel that quietness. So the eyes only have to be open just a little tiny bit for that to happen.
Okay. Then can you discuss any knowledge that you have about the use of neurofeedback for people who have experienced trauma?
Absolutely. So neurofeedback, actually, when I lived in Topeka is when I first learned about neurofeedback. The Menninger Foundation was in Topeka before it moved down to Texas, Baylor University. Elmer Green was there, and neurofeedback really is a wonderful tool for people that have had traumatic experiences. I think it can be very helpful, but it's different than meditation. It's different than I showed you this EEG headset. What is used now in terms of biofeedback is quantitative neurofeedback. It's looking at your entire brain. It's looking at your alpha, gamma brain waves, the whole spectrum of your brain waves, and it's really that you have to have a professional that looks at all those brain waves to determine how they can help you. So it's a great, very good modality.
Great. And then for you, as somebody who's practiced meditation for many years, how long are your personal daily sessions?
I keep mine to 20 minutes. I do something I actually practice what is called mindfulness concurrently. And that is nothing more than paying attention to what you're doing while you're doing it. So I'm paying attention, as I'm talking to all of you, I'm really paying attention to what I'm saying, you know, how I'm sitting, kind of what's going on. And that's a hard thing to do, to try to get a sense of what that's like. You know, after this talk, try to pay attention to your breathing and go about your day and see how many times you actually pay attention to your breathing. But make a conscious decision to try to pay attention to breathing and see how soon you forget it. It doesn't take long.
Great. And I think that helped answer Joanne's question about explaining mindfulness. So, yeah. Okay. Are there other questions that folks have? Okay. I'm not hearing any others. So, yeah, we're a little over time, and I think some people just had to drop off. But this was very good content, and thank you very much for guiding us through this. And I feel more relaxed even just after one minute.
And it's wonderful to meet everybody. I really appreciated the opportunity. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.